Josiah is super excited to read chapter 5.
During the next few weeks, Cousin Dinky flew his glider back and forth among the Smalls, the Crumbs, the Shorts, like Buttons, and the Littles. The Smalls were overjoyed at the idea of having a meeting of tiny families in their home. They set about making extra beds from some cigar boxes Mr. Small had been saving for years, and they finally got to work on that guest room they had been planning for the attic. The Crumb family were afraid to journey overland to the Smalls. Mr. and Mrs. Crumb didn't think there was a good enough reason to face the hardship and dangers that might happen to them away from home. Cousin Dinky tried hard to get them to change their minds. After all, he told them, it was Betty who wrote the song that made everybody want to go. It's just a song, Dinky, said Mr. Crumb. We're not changing the way of life because of a song. The Crumb children were very disappointed. The Shorts said they would come. Their oldest girl had been writing to the Small's oldest boy. They wanted very much to meet each other. They also had a boy, Tom, Little's age, named Kurt. He and Tom had been sending each other message in code. Mr. and Mrs. Button were the family nearest to the Smalls. They decided to come even though they had no children. If it was your idea, Dinky, said Mr. Button, I'm all for it. The Buttons were one of the few tiny families in the valley who dared to visit their neighbors once in a while. Mr. and Mrs. Button came to visit the Smalls every summer. Over the years, they had found the safest way to go. The day set for the meeting was August the 2nd, the night before when everyone was packing. Granny Little finally showed the Littles what she had been knitting. Ever since Tom Little had been tame Hadley the cat, the old woman had secretly wanted to ride her, so she had knitted a large double basket to be hung over the cat's back. I didn't knit this contraption for the trip, said Granny Little. But now that it's finished, maybe we can use it. The invitation was tested and found workable. Mr. Little decided they should use it on the trip. Mrs. Little would ride in one basket on one side of the cat's back, and Granny Little would ride on the other side. Tom would ride in his usual place on Heidi's neck. Hildy. Or he would walk in front of the animal. Tom had tamed the cat by talking to it. He didn't want to get too far away from the cat's ears. The big day arrived. The Littles were all set to go. They went over their plans with Cousin Dinky one last time. If you follow the route I've laid out for you, said Cousin Dinky, there won't be any trouble. Remember, I've made many trips on foot in the big valley. Believe me, I know the safest way. The Littles nodded. Uncle Pete waved a sword made from one of Mrs. Big's needles. There's nothing to worry about, Dinky, he said. This sword is the best protection there is. Put that thing away before you scratch someone, said Granny Little. As I see it, said Mr. Little, if we have to use our weapons, that will mean we haven't done the things right. That's a true fact, Uncle Will, said Cousin Dinky. This should be a peaceful, enjoyable trip. Nonsense, said Uncle Pete. If we really believed that, we wouldn't carry any weapons. I see you're all well armed. It was true. The Littles were prepared for trouble. The Little carried another needle sword. Tom Little was armed with a bow and arrows. Lucy carried some pepper. She thought the pepper would be a powerful weapon to use on an enemy. It'll make him sneeze so much he won't be able to fight back, she said. Miss Little was armed too. She carried her kitchen knife tied to her waist. In addition to all this, each Little carried a match stuck in his belt. Yes, Uncle Pete, we are armed, said Miss Little. We are also carrying presents for our friends. I'd rather think about that. Lucy Little giggled. I can use my pepper for a present or a weapon, Uncle Pete, she said. I know you think your pepper is a powerful weapon.
This is Uncle
I know you think that your pepper is a powerful weapon, Lucy, said Uncle Pete. Just make sure the wind is blowing the right way when you use it. Your old uncle doesn't want to be seasoned. All the littles laughed. Speaking of the wind blowing the wrong way, said Cousin Dinky, I'll be flying back and forth over your routes. There are 4 families to watch over, and I may not have the wind on my back when I need it. So if you do get into trouble, Cousin Dinky went on, send up the red kite I made for you and keep it up. Each family has a red kite and a spool of thread. You did get a thread, didn't you, Lucy? Said Mrs. Little. I got it from Mrs. Big's sewing basket yesterday and gave it to Tom, said Lucy. It's in my pack, said Tom. On Hildy's rest with packs. Are you sure you can trust the cat? Said Uncle Dinky.
No, Cousin Dinky.
Cousin Dinky? No. Tom and the Big's cat are the best friends, said wait. Tom and the Big's cat are the best friends, said Mrs. Little. She smiled at her son. Tom has a way with cats, said Mr. Little. He tamed Hildy by talking to her. I wouldn't have believed it if it could be done, but I saw him do it with my own 2 eyes. And I still don't believe it, said Uncle Pete. I would load my pack on that animal for all the tea in China. When the cat runs for home, at least one of us will have something left. Now, Peter, said Granny Litter, just because Tom tamed that cat proved you wrong, you can't admit it. Said Uncle Pete. You'll see, Hildy. We'll do a good job, said Mr. Little. You can't ever tell what a cat will do, said Uncle Pete.
Thanks, Josiah. What do you think? Do you think they're going to have any trouble on the cat going to the other people's house? Or do you think it'll be smooth?
You see me.